Is it the prospect of is it from the prospect of warmer days for those of us who are on the East Coast, more light, the lengthening of days? Is it astrological? Is it environmental? And perhaps we can posit for those of us who are here that somehow it must come from within us. That whether it comes from external to us, it also may come from within us. So I want to invite us to just begin with that premise that this increased joy, it comes from within us. And I'm reminded of a story. One of the first times I ever started to meditate was I guess the year 2002, and I was on a program studying comparative religion. It was my junior year of college. That gives you a sense of how old I am, and I'm probably older than I look to you. I was studying comparative religion, and I found myself in a monastery in Taiwan, and I actually found myself in an elevator with four Buddhist nuns, and I, in some ways, kind of had them as my captive audience. I had no conditioned meditation practice and had every urge to just want to like ask them a million questions. And these are, nuns who otherwise probably spend all of their day largely in silence, not because they're on retreat, but because they're so profoundly present and deeply practiced in restraint and renunciation. So here I am, this Western activist, queer, agitated by everything in the world. And I find myself in this elevator and I've got like 6 floors with these nuns. And I was just like, oh my God, what do I ask first? It wasn't like we were there together. We just walked in the elevator at the same time. And I just was like, I can finally ask them all my questions. And I couldn't tell you any of their names. There was nothing distinguishing about them. They all had shaved heads. They were all wearing the same clothes. I have a very clear visual of the experience, but there's nothing unique about each of these nuns. And the first thing I asked them was, are you happy? It seemed like such a basic question, but I just wanted to know, like, you live in a remote mountain in a very beautiful monastery, actually. It was like marble floors and the most comfortable bed I ever slept in. Like, you live this monastic life. I just wanted to know, are you happy? And for most of them, it probably wasn't even by choice. So really I wanted to, and they responded so earnestly, oh, yes, we're happy. And then one of them told me a story that a scientist studied monks and nuns who were coming off of 3 years of silent retreat to gauge their happiness on some sort of brain wave happiness meter. And if the happiness meter kind of ticks from like 0 to 100, the average human brain maybe fluctuates, between 20 and 60. And they tried to get a reading of the brain waves for these folks coming off of retreat. And it was like, they broke the machine. It was like, ding, 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 ding. It was like, and the nun starts to tell me the story. She was like, our happiness doesn't read in Western terms. The quality of happiness that we experience is what we would colloquially call off the charts. Like there's a profound, persistent, pervasive kind of joy that is possible when we cultivate quiet and silence that is immeasurable to the Western capitalist experience. And that is what we are here to benefit from the teachings that produce a kind of joy that itself is, it's like sourdough starter. It is self-rising and self-fermenting. So whatever sentiment you arrive here this morning, whatever happened earlier in your day, there is no doubt that many of us arrive filled with grief and anxiety and concerns. These are tremendously isolating and difficult times. Tremendous amounts of food scarcity and financial insecurity, longing and missing of our loved ones. We're desperate for touch and connection. And yet I'm thinking of these nuns who experience a kind of off-the-chart joy that was possible by sitting on a cushion in silence, in the presence of others, in a room that looked nothing like this Zoom room, but kind of everything like it at the same time. Just neat row upon row of cushion, kind of lined up in the way that our quilt of faces for those who are on gallery Zoom are. It's kind of like each of us is on a zafu, one in front of the other, and here we are side by side encouraging each other's practice. And so I guess we can dangle the fruit of happiness in front of us to motivate us to sit, to know that one reason why we sit is actually for what Rabbi Nachman says, lihiyot besimcha tamid, that it actually makes it possible perhaps to always be happy. So with that, I want to invite you to find your feet on the ground. The pressure of the soles or the tops of your feet against the floor or carpet. Noticing the bend in your knees, the sensation of your tush upon a chair or a cushion. And to find a posture that is not necessarily comfortable, but is also relaxed. Could be sitting or standing, lying down, or even walking. And to begin by committing to that posture. To say whatever sensations and thoughts arise that might encourage me to move or shift or change positions, I'm going to welcome them in but not respond to them. To let the posture be a kind of anchor, to let it steady you. We can notice in our torso and in our shoulders where we can release additional tension. Shake out our wrists, loosen our necks, wiggle our jaws, undo our eyelids. Perhaps there's an experience of pain or pleasure in your body that's calling your attention. We can offer it a kind of radical hospitality and welcome it just as it is. And same for the thoughts. Perhaps there's a pronounced thought that's calling our attention, and we can say, have a seat. You're welcome here. Join me. Without any need to resolve or respond to it. Noticing the rise and fall of the stomach. And as the mind wanders, which it will do, and we just notice the moment when we realize it. This is the moment when we can do tshuva and return to the breath. Rise and fall of the stomach. Sensation of breath on the upper lip. Begin to invite in some more awareness, perhaps wiggling your toes or your fingers. This season of simcha, of Adar, that is, highlighted by the holiday of Purim, but precedes and succeeds it, is linked to another season in Jewish time, the holiday of Sukkot, which we also describe as Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. Rabbi Alan Lew, alav hashalom, of such blessed tender memory, in his writings about Sukkot, he writes, "When we speak of joy, we are not speaking of fun. Joy is a deep release of the soul and includes death and pain. Joy is any feeling fully felt, any experience we give our whole being to. We are conditioned to choose pleasure and reject pain, but the truth is, any moment of our life fully inhabited, any feeling fully felt, any immersion in the full depth of life can be the source of deep joy." Your practice today really is precisely an invitation into more fully inhabiting our lives, more fully feeling our feelings, more fully immersing in the full depth of experience, and in that way really is a pathway to joy, as those nuns taught me years ago in an elevator. So thank you so much for your practice and for encouraging the possibility of joy in this month of Adar.
Thank you so much, Arla. Beautiful, beautiful teaching. Looking forward to unpacking that a little bit in a moment. Friends, we want to bring that practice into our support for those of us who are in mourning or observing a yard site, and we invite those of you who are to, if you'd like, to share the name or names of those whose memories, whose souls you are holding in your heart today in the chat box. Feel free to add it there. Of course, it's a time of great collective grief, and so we're holding in our hearts the really incalculable loss that we are all living through in this time of pandemic, and invite those who are so moved to rise in body or in spirit to join me in Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shamei Rabba, Yama, Dira, Kirute, Yamich Malchute, V'chayeko, Yemucho, Mekayeko, Beit Yisrael, Ha'agala, V'Tzarim, V'Imru, Amen.
Amen.
Gehesh, Shmei Rabba, Barach, Shmei Hamaya, Yitbarach, Yishtabach, Yitkar, Yitzman, B'Naseh, Yitkada, Yitalev, Yitol, Shmei Kedusha, Leilal Min Kol Birchata V'Nechama V'Nechama Yehesh Lama Rabba Min Shemaya
Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'Chaim Aleinu V'Kol Yisrael V'Imru
Yiseh Shalom B'Ramam
Shalom
Aleinu Kol Yisrael Kol Toshvei Tevel.
Amen.
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 Amen. Once again, thanks to Rabbi Ari Lev Harnari of Kol Tzedek Synagogue in West Philly for leading us so beautifully once again today. And thanks to Ann Greenstein for sponsoring our practice today in honor of Bev Sherman-Labbitt's birthday, special birthday. Happy birthday again, Bev. Great to celebrate it with you. And thanks to Adi Stein for holding our tech container so beautifully. As always, you're invited to stay on for a few minutes of conversation, questions and answers about this teaching today and our practice. For those who are joining us tomorrow, I'm looking forward to our being led by Rabbi Jenny Solomon, who'll be leading us tomorrow in practice, and on Friday, Cantor Heather Batchelor will be joining us from Montreal, Canada, to lead us in practice. So we hope to see you tomorrow and or Friday, and continuing next week as well, of course, into Purim. So for those who are leaving us, have a great rest of the day, and we hope to see you tomorrow. For those who are staying on, if you have a question that you'd like to put to Rabbi Ari Lev, please put it in the chat box and preface it if you can in all caps with question. We'll try to keep an eye on that. And that was really fantastic. I shared before we sat down, my intention was to identify and deal compassionately with the obstacles for me for feeling simcha, Ari Lev, and this was actually really quite helpful. So I want to circle back, as I like to do, just to kind of briefly review the elements of the teaching and lift them up a little bit. So that incredible story about those nuns and about a phrase that will now live live for us, live for me anyway, of off the charts joy, and what that means, and connecting it with that quote from Alan Liu, which maybe if you keep the book handy, it might be worth. That's a keeper. That's worth repeating and hearing again and taking it in a little bit more deeply. But it's a game changer, really. So my question for you is, Alan Liu, to paraphrase it, my understanding of what he's saying is that although we may often associate pleasure with simcha, with joy, at least for him, that's not what it means. It means really being fully present to our experience of the moment. And so it can include a lot of things that we would consider pretty unpleasant, right? And unpleasurable, including death, mourning, sickness even. Do you think, so I have kind of two-part question there, like, do you think is that your understanding about what the nuns were referring to? Was that their understanding of simcha, or did they have a different understanding of it? I was a little confused about that. Let's start there. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, that is my sense. I mean, I think that's why I linked that reading with that story, not consciously, but sort of on a deeper sense. I think my feeling is, if what we're looking for is a life full of laughter, full of what we might think of as joy, right? Going to a party or laughing or, I don't know, eating good food or whatever, sensory joy.
Well, the things we call smachot, joyful events too, right?
Yeah.
We don't call funerals smachot, but
right, that's
in
true.
a sense, but in a sense, based on Alan Liu's, description of it, really anything could be simcha.
And I think that's why for him it comes up in his chapter on Sukkot. He writes about on an earlier page, he precedes it with a passage I hadn't read. It's on page 264 for people who have the book. The passage I read, if you have, the title of the book is "This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared." It has a new printing and it no longer looks like this, but if you can get the original printing, it's such a beautiful cover. This is Real and You Are Completely Unprepared. It's basically a meditative journey through the high holidays. I have so much sadness. He died very young, and I was like, you never wrote the book for the rest of the year. I want his book on Shabbat and Passover, and but he writes specifically about this kind of joy relative to Sukkot, because he says he says this. This special joy is precisely the joy of being stripped naked, the joy of being flush with life, the joy of having nothing between our skin and the wind and the starlight, nothing between us and the world. We have spent the past many weeks stripping ourselves naked. He's speaking at this point about being in Sukkot, referencing the high holidays. Acknowledging our brokenness, allowing ourselves to see what we won't usually look at, embracing the emptiness at the core of our experience, reducing our lives to a series of impulses that rise up and then fall away again. And we have let the reins of denial slip a little. We have relaxed our fierce determination to ward off death at any cost. We have invited ourselves to entertain the possibility that we might die. On Rosh Hashanah it is written, we acknowledge who will live and who will die. And by Yom Kippur we have acknowledged that it may very well be us who dies. So now we sit flush with the world in a house that calls attention to the fact that it gives us no shelter. It is not really a house. It is the interrupted idea of a house, a parody of a house. It exposes the idea of a house as an illusion. A house that gives us security, shelter, haven from the storm is no house, but no house can really offer us this. We never really believed in this illusion. That's why we never felt really secure in it. I just think he's really getting at what the nuns are getting at. If we think we can take refuge in the material world, we're fooling ourselves. That's delusion. We can't take refuge in that which is external to us, in whether or not it's sunny, and whether or not we like what we happen to cook for dinner, and whether or not, you know, someone in our family had the right response to a question we asked them, or no, the kind of refuge he's describing is the refuge of being more flush with life, and that actually just includes whatever life is, which includes death and pain and suffering. So I think he's describing precisely the kind of happiness that the nuns were describing to me in the elevator.
Yeah, that's so great. There's a good follow-up question from Lori about finding and being in joy while the body is sick and in pain. So that's obviously, it's obviously a big challenge. But I'm imagining that the way this framing of simcha maybe, offers the possibility of an answer to that.
Well, one answer to that is actually, I felt this last Friday on Rosh Chodesh Elul. We had kind of like a Zoom glitch at Kol Tzedek, where I'm the rabbi. We had double booked 2 Zoom rooms, one for Hallel and one for our daily study practice. And then we simultaneously also had a Beit Din for conversion going. And at one point I was actually on 3 devices in 3 different Zoom rooms, trying to sort of get everyone into the right places and do like air traffic control. And at one point,
you didn't have a cat filter also, did you?
I needed a cat filter at that moment, and it sort of arose in me the resistance, right? This is the Buddha writes about this. Like at first I was like, I hate the pandemic. Get me into a real building with real people. Like I hate the computer. Like I was so annoyed. I was just like, I'm literally on my phone, my computer. My kid is doing homeschool next to me on another computer. Like I've entered into like cyber hell, it felt like. And then once I allowed that reaction to pass, I actually like kind of felt elated. I was like, oh my God, what a relief. Zoom Shul has finally come crashing down. For a year, I've been trying to keep it together, and it's been painstaking to think we have it all together. This is a disaster. Like trying to figure out how to actually manage everything. And I was like, oh, thank God Adar is here. I can finally unravel. And I'm even getting a little teary. I was so happy about that. The ability to unravel and be with the complete mess of it and the stress of it for what it was, not trying to change it. And it was a momentary joy. But when I arrived at this conversion, I was actually still wearing my tefillin, because all of this actually started, I was in my own personal davening, and I started getting these messages, we're having a Zoom problem. We need you. We need another Zoom link. And I was like, okay. So I arrived to this Beit Din for conversion in my talit and tefillin, having been in like 3 Zoom rooms at once. And I was kind of crying tears of joy, honestly, because I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy. Things are a mess. It feels so much better this way. So somehow maybe we can do the same thing with physical pain. Like if we can notice the pain in our knee, which is inseparable from sitting in meditation, and just be like, just give it our full attention. How much that really hurts. Is it warm? What's the temperature of it? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it moving? Is it still? Is it pulsing? Is it punching? Is it vibrating? Like, what is it really like? And when we can meet it with all of that curiosity, it still hurts, but there's a kind of joy in actually knowing it.
Yeah. And I think, I really resonate with what you're saying. And I think, layering on top of that also the compassionate attention to it, that is, of really offering oneself tremendous compassion, for being in pain, and I won't In other words, really not layering suffering on top of the pain, but by being with and attentive to in a loving way towards the pain, it doesn't take the pain away, but it does shift things in a way. I don't know, at least that's my experience about that. The other thing you thought during the sit,
Marcus, part of
yeah,
what it shifts is our resistance to it, right? The Buddha
uh-huh,
describes this as the second arrow, right? So the first arrow is the pain itself, but the
right,
second arrow is our resistance to it. And what keeps us from being able to feel the kind of simcha that Alan Liu is talking about is
uh-huh,
we first want to guard ourselves from feeling the pain to begin with. And if we keep ourselves from the pain, we actually keep ourselves from all feeling. If we can't allow the pain to be there, then we're not going to know when it leaves because we've guarded ourselves from our real experience.
yeah.
I have one
Um,
other thing I want to share, Mark.
go
I saw a
ahead,
question
go.
in the chat about joy and sorrow or pain. And
Mm-hmm,
I wanted to share one other teaching actually from the Prophet Khalil Gibran. Has anyone
mm-hmm.
shared this recently?
Nope,
This
go.
is one of my this is my like Rosh Chodesh Adar Torah.
Mm-hmm,
Khalil Gibran writes, then a woman said, speak to us of joy and sorrow. And he answered, your joy is your sorrow unmasked. And the self same well from which your laughter rises was oftentimes filled with your tears.
mm,
And how else can it be? The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Is not the cup, is not the cup that holds your wine the very cup that was burned in the potter's oven? He writes more, and then he says, your joy is greater. He's trying to figure out, is joy greater than sorrow? And he says, no, sorrow is greater than joy. But I say unto you, they are inseparable. Together they come, and when one sits alone with you at your board, remember the other is asleep upon your bed. Only when you are empty are you only when you are empty are you at standstill and balanced, suspended like scales between your sorrow and your joy. I think this is related. We can that our capacity for joy and our capacity for sorrow are so deeply linked. Though grieving deeply makes celebrating deeply possible, and also to think that when we're joyful, that the sorrow is it's one breath away, and when we're sorrowful, joy is one breath away.
it's
So
also sounds, seems to me at least profoundly Jewish, so profoundly Jewish experience, that connection between sorrow and joy. That has been the Jewish story. I'm also thinking, there are so many different words in Jewish tradition for, for the spectrum of
yeah.
happiness and joy, even in, and it is worth remembering. So like the line from the Megillah that's read, La Yehudim Haita Ora B'Simcha B'Sason Bikar, which is also said on it's traditionally said for Havdalah at the end of Shabbat. Also, just a reminder of like begin the week with this reminder of Kain Tihiyeh Lanu, like may we also have that joy, whatever that's expressed in this really complicated way in the Megillah, right? About like it's not an uncomplicated joy, but there was somebody like, and then Ashrei, Ashrei Yoshei V'Techa, and Osher, like what's the distinction between the nuanced distinction between these different terms. But if we're defining simcha the way Alan Liu is presenting it, and you're presenting it here, Ari Lev, then to me it does seem possible to take more seriously Rabbi Nachman's teaching about to be besimcha tamid, continually. Can I really always be like happy, like like up? No, but I can. It's within my capacity to be present to. Um, so the example I wanted to give you during the sit was when at some point when you said you referred to doing tshuva and coming back to the noticing having wandered off and then coming back, and I thought, oh, I just did it, and I felt happy for the moment. I felt like oh, I did it, I came back, and I felt happiness, like, and I felt like, okay, that's enough, like out of all the many times that my mind's going to wander off, you know, forever, whatever length of time, and then come back, if it only happens just that once in that moment, instead of thinking, because my often thought is like, yeah, you did it then, but you're going to forget again, you know,
That's
you're
the
not going to
second
be able to.
arrow.
That's the
the
second
heart
arrow.
of the second
Exactly.
arrow.
That's the second arrow. So for a moment, you know, I put that one back in the quiver and said, okay, I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, so in my own, I had a moment of experience, you know, what you're talking about. So thank you for that. Looking through these messages, see if there's any other. Oh, wow. Oh, thanks for the reference. Anything else we're missing? Well, we're at time anyway. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time, Marilev. And we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Okay.
Next Wednesday.
All right. Many blessings to you and to everyone. And thanks again, Adi. And we'll hopefully see everyone tomorrow, 12:30 with Rabbi Jenny Solomon. Be well, everyone.